Wednesday, June 13th, 2023. And if you want to do the roll call for us, that'd be
Mayor
great.
Condrey,
Here.
Mr. Richmond, Ms. Cash,
Here.
Ms. Sipsey,
Here.
Ms. Lawley,
Here.
Mr. Bonnell,
Here.
Dr. Zollett.
Here.
Okay, do we have any citizen comments? Motion to, oh yeah, let's see. Do we have a motion to, we haven't had an absent person in a little while. Who are we missing? Mr. Richmond. Do we have a motion to excuse Mr. Richmond from today's meeting?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, he's been excused. Any citizen comments today? So we actually have a citizen in our presence.
Yes.
The infamous.
That's one of the nicest compliments I've gotten in many years.
Mr. Lewis, would you like to say anything to the Board of Health?
Yes, thank you. My name's Steve Lewis. I'm at 4614 Woodrow Drive. A little clarification. So I am on Park Board. I am not here representing Park Board, but the topic I will be bringing up, talking about very briefly, we have discussed, but I want to make it very clear I'm not here representing them. So this all goes towards having feral animals and feeding feral animals in our park system on public ground. I've become a little bit frustrated in the sense of, and I look at this across the board, if we're going to pass ordinances and we're going to pass laws, then I would like to see them adhered to. I'm not trying to be a stickler. I'm not saying you get rapped on the knuckles if you don't enforce every bit of it. But this continuing of feeding cats and feeding animals on public ground is bringing in other wildlife. You're having a larger population of raccoons, skunks, possums. Then you get into the predatory animals that are kind of hunting them. If you have not seen it, there are some documented pictures, which this is common. And I'll preface this, I'm not a wildlife expert. A lot of days hunting with my father, a lot of years. But I also use some gentlemen that trap for me because in my business, I have to deal with a lot of wildlife. Anything from moles to raccoons and roofs and all of that. But there is documented pictures of coyotes now on the hospital, the old hospital grounds. Now, what does that mean? I don't really know. Are they gonna come out and attack someone walking a dog? I don't know. Plus, we're having building going on, so these animals get pushed into different areas, right? And they also become acclimated to us. So back to the cats. My concern here is that there's just a lot of muddy water on what's being done. I'm hearing that they get picked up, they get spaded, but then they get returned. Our concern, my main concern would be in this realm, would be the roundworm that can be contracted from raccoons, from raccoons to cats. Now, how many documented cases are there of roundworm? I don't think there's a bunch. But just the whole health issue, then we get into, well, if we can feed cats at the park, what else can we do? Can we set up hammocks? Can we do whatever? Again, not to go too far, but this is more of a health and following guidelines that the parks have set up so that people understand that this is everyone's park, not just yours. So, that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate your time. This brings back many memories. My father was on Board of Health for many, many years and brought me here as I was a young Boy Scout for civics. I hated getting up this early at time coming to these, but it brings back great memories. But if you would like to come, one of the members, we appreciated last night's representation at our Park Board meeting, but if anyone else would like to come, we would appreciate it.
Oh, we have a board opening too, so just so you can maybe start getting.
Two boards are enough. And I'm not doing very well on either one.
I have a question. When are those meetings?
So, second Monday,
Okay.
so last night, same building.
Here.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Be tickled to have you. Thank you,
for
you
being
guys
here.
have a nice day.
Thank you for being the first citizen comment in 3.5 years.
I'll see you Tuesday then.
What time would his meetings be? He didn't say.
Park board, I've got it.
Last night, what was Olivia went, was 6:30?
Yeah,
6:30.
6:30.
In the evening, yes.
Here in this room. Oh, you did go last night?
Yeah, she went last
Nice.
night. And she's impressing people around the region. She
Oh.
went to some other health commissioner person, came back and said, you have a sharp, that person. I'm like, yeah.
On his point, I know we do have an ordinance that does, ban people from feeding wild animals, for what it's worth. I did find it.
Yeah,
So it is illegal in Middletown.
Is that up to the police to police it?
They got enough problems.
Right,
They're
I mean,
police, but they're
that's-
supposed to be police.
Now,
No.
we do have an animal control officer who's dedicated to that topic, and I see you driving around, so that is a law enforcement officer.
Cause I think you pulled that when we
Yeah.
were talking about the coyotes before, the ordinance, so we do have one. It was that, and what else? It was
That was the only one, and
that you couldn't feed
that,
in the
it says that you
parks.
cannot feed animals, period, then wild or otherwise, in the parks.
In the parks, cause we were thinking about some people have them at homes too.
Right,
Didn't affect,
It was
you know,
specific
remember
to
those
the
homes
parks.
that, the
Mhm.
complaints that we get from people that are feeding cats in the neighborhoods, but it was just in the parks,
because
right?
it's actually in the parks ordinance.
Right, okay.
It's a parks ordinance, yeah. That might be true. It might not be,
It's not it's not like a health and nuisance kind of ordinance, it's
Okay.
a parks ordinance.
okay, I'll
That
see
was
if I can find
passed.
it again. I pulled it out and actually sent him the ordinance at one point. So I'll make sure you guys all get the text of that so that you know, just so that you can be educated on it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. That brings us to approval of, well, is there anything anyone wants to follow up with that on? I mean, we're on the topic. Does anybody want to comment on it? Do we think that is a Board of Health or a Department of Health issue that we should be concerned about, or is it something we should look into and maybe bring up at a future date?
I think, I wanna look into the roundworms and the connection with, you know, roundworms and
Yeah.
raccoons and cats and look at that. Just get a little more information on that, and then we can always, when we go to meetings, we can always check with our fellow counterparts if they're having any
Mhm.
issues with, you know, coyotes and, you know, wildlife and that kind of stuff.
Okay,
So we can bring it up later if we find something, but I made a note of it here. Chandra can look into some of the disease aspects of it.
okay, here is one. It does say, no person shall feed or provide any form of food to any animal in the park other than a dog or service animal which is in their possession. No food of any kind shall be left behind in the park. And all consumable items shall be removed from the park or deposited into a park waste receptacle. So, obviously, we do know there are people leaving a lot of food behind in the parks for feral cats specifically. So there's that one. I think there is another ordinance though too. But there's one.
That's under the park.
That is under, chapter 1070 parks.
1070 parks.
Yes. It says imprisonment for up to 5 years. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I don't know what.
We gotta go visit our friends.
That's not a bad idea.
The cat's in the cell with them.
There you go. There you go, pets.
Okay, that brings us to approval of minutes for May of 2023. Did anyone see any corrections before we motion? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes for May of 2023?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, minutes have been approved, and thank you for always being on top of the minutes, for approving them right as soon as we can. Financial report for May of 2023. Do we have any comments, questions on that before we motion? Oh, also, do we note for the record, we have all of our board members present now. Do you have a motion to receive and file a financial report for May of 2023? Motion?
I approve.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, and next we have an education presentation on vaping.
Yay.
Dun, dun, dun.
So Dr. Genowine's absence, the Director of Nursing, Chandra Corbin, is going to do a small presentation, but it just kind of sets us up for our joint meeting next week. But this is some information that was given to her, and it's a video. Did you get the video embedded in there?
Yeah.
That's a really neat little succinct video that kind of talks about vaping and youth. And so it's a pretty easy one to, if we wanted to give it to anyone else, it's pretty, what do you call it? Informative, but
Yeah.
easy to understand, very easy and quick to understand, so,
We're in the video generation.
yeah.
And it's like 2 minutes, so that's why it's pretty much jam-packs everything that I'm gonna talk about into that 2 minutes, so we'll start off with that.
E-cigarettes, or vapes, are battery-operated devices that produce vapor instead of smoke. And instead of being packed with tobacco, they have cartridges filled with a liquid that contains flavorings and nicotine. Vapes haven't gone through a health and safety review yet, but that hasn't stopped big companies from making all sorts of unfounded claims and tempting you to try them. Meanwhile, the science is in. Researchers have found harmful ingredients in vapes, including ultrafine particles that can damage the lungs, oils and flavorings that are linked to serious lung disease, volatile organic compounds like benzene, which is found in car exhaust, and poisonous metals like nickel, tin, and lead. And then there's nicotine, which is extremely addictive and especially bad for young people because of the way the brain works. Our brains grow rapidly until we reach our mid-20s. And using nicotine while it's still developing can disturb this process and increase our risk for addiction and mental health issues later in life. This is because nicotine affects synapse formation in the parts of the brain that control attention and learning, which can lead to memory issues, mood disorders, and lower impulse control permanently. Kids who use nicotine in middle and high school are more likely to use cigarettes and other drugs in the future. Young people who vape are 4 times more likely to go on to smoke cigarettes than those who don't, and juuling delivers way more nicotine than smoking. A single Juul pod is equivalent to 20 cigarettes, which makes all of these risks even more dramatic. It could take years before we fully understand how vaping affects our health. It took 120 years for researchers to show how dangerous cigarettes are. But what experts already know should stop us in our tracks. Get ahead of history. Protect your brain.
So, all of this kind of is leading into, you know, Jackie said, the joint meeting with council to go over the Tobacco 21, the reasons why we support that initiative for licensing. So the PRIDE study is done with students in schools 6th grade through 12th grade. It's done every couple of years to gauge perception and use, and the whole goal is to decrease the age of first use, because again, the younger you start, the more likely you are to become addicted and continue on with other addictive behaviors. So the interventions that have been going on amongst those topics have been showing great progress, as you can see with just the past use gone down significantly in all of the things except for alcohol and vaping. And the perception of parental disapproval, they know their parents don't like it, and they know their friends don't like it, but they're still doing it. So the idea is that the goals for tobacco and alcohol use and marijuana and everything is to get those numbers lower on the use over the last 30 days. So part of that effort is the tobacco licensing under the retail licensing ordinance. Next. So Cincinnati started theirs already, and they've seen some significant numbers for the sales have gone down to, you know, the youth as they're doing these checks. So it's making a great impact in Cincinnati. And the youth are finding it harder to access tobacco all around. Numbers getting a little, not quite as dramatic, but any decrease is good.
Meaning basically, the stores aren't selling it as a high of a rate, but they are still
They're
finding
still
it
finding it
in
somewhere.
some gap of a rate.
Right, I mean,
Difference,
you
yeah.
still have to look at it as, you know, finding an older person to go in and buy your
Which we all
products
know
for you,
is, of
or
course,
stealing
yeah.
it from your parents, kind of thing. Yeah. So, there's just some statistics from the CDC, you know, found that 99% of e-cigarettes sold contain nicotine, even though they may not be labeled as having nicotine in them. So again, these things are not as regulated, so it's kind of misleading. Even adults don't understand that there's nicotine in these products. Obviously, as the video said, it can damage a developing brain and affect attention, learning, mood, and impulse control. What may start as a social experiment, which a lot of kids, that's exactly what it is. Their friends are doing it, they see their parents doing it, they see it on social media, can turn into a big addiction. So, I want you to look at this picture. What do you see? I mean, that could be anybody's purse, anybody's backpack getting dumped out. How many of those things do you think are vaping items? Any ideas? Guesses?
3
Two.
3 or 4.
Under 3 or 4.
5.
I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
So part of the issue is these companies, and if you think back, like Camel Joe back in the day, you know, he was a cartoon camel character, Joe Camel. But it was a marketing idea to get younger people involved, and well, they're still doing it today. Now with the vaping, they're making it to where it's appealing, it's easy to hide, people don't necessarily know that you have it, they're cute. So go ahead and show them how many there are. Those are actually all vapes.
Those are vapes.
The pen?
That pen
yeah,
is
the
a
pen is
functional pen, and it contains a vape cartridge that you use the top of the pen. The jewel is number 3 is a jewel, and that little USB is the actual cartridge. Of the vape. And then the other 2 look like those little Mio drink things, or a small mouse. And number 5 is kind of shaped like a marker. Yeah. So I mean, they're kind of deceptive, and that's why schools are having even hard time identifying what kids have.
So it's sort of like they're marketed to.
They absolutely are. They are marketed to
They
hide.
are.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that we have to be reminded of is most things that public health tries to protect is the most vulnerable, right? And so there are predators, in a sense, if you will, that target certain individuals. They just do. Across the board about different things. They know how to, like women in shoes. I bet men don't get as many ads of shoes than I get. I'm just kidding. So, that's a joke. But I do have shoe problems. I do have shoe problems. But I think sometimes we have to look at it when we start weighing the difference. Everybody, you know, we just need to protect some of these kids. And often, if you put some barriers up, they'll get to them, but it just makes it more difficult. And so that's what we're basically talking when we try to limit the access to harmful things maybe. And as they get older, of course, their brains, like I said, at 25, when the brains are better, but I think it's gonna be interesting when the visions partner person comes in to talk to us. They're finding out a lot of information, and they're saying that they're finding a lot of even marijuana in children, a lot of psychosis in adults, that they are having a lot of different mental health issues because of marijuana in the brain as they were younger. And this marijuana is so different. It's just different than the marijuana that we saw in the 70s. And so they were just saying, so how to handle that. Older people may be able to handle it because our brains are on the way to dementia anyway. No, but younger kids, so it means just all the information is very, and the last thing is all the different flavors, how harmful the flavors are, because it's just different particles that go into your lungs too. If we were just straight up tobacco, maybe that might even be purer than when you start putting all the different stuff in it.
Our lungs are not meant to breathe in oils and liquids, so.
Excellent, Chandra. That was good. I don't know where I was getting 7 from. I don't know, I said the whiteout. Did you say
Yeah.
7 too? It was some other little things at the bottom that looked like.
If you, I mean, if you really wanna go down a rabbit hole of what is being offered, one, you can go into a vape store and just shop, and look around. But if you go online and start looking at the images, there are literally Sharpie markers, has the logos on them and everything, and they are vape pens. So, and highlighters. It just is, it's really kinda scary to think that all of that could just be going through the schools. And if they're the small little vape pens, they don't produce that cloud of vape, but you'll smell it, because again, they like the flavors and the scents. But you're not gonna know where it came from, because you're gonna see it as a highlighter or a pen. So it's getting very difficult to identify.
Oh, one last thing, that Beth Race said that she was going around to schools. Beth Race is the director of the ESC, Family Children's First Council down in Hamilton. They were going around to schools trying to pick up some vape stuff that they were trying to dispose of. And a couple things they found. They found vape in Rosa Parks and another school in Butler County Elementary. So this is not middle school and high school. So they're finding it in 4th and 5th graders, like in that. They're finding it in toilet paper, where people hide them in the toilet paper rolls often, so that if they go back in there, they can, get their vape pens or something they don't have on them. And they also said that the batteries can explode in the drawer and cause fires, is when you get them online where they're not regulated and you're getting them somewhere else. So it's even a fire hazard. And so it was just, these are just some of the reports that the schools have as far as vaping. I don't know if we could get, sometimes people may not know the schools are having problems, but maybe we can even I can try to see if a school representative is there the night of our our joint meeting, to see if they had something to add on there
Who
too.
buys it for them?
When they go online, pretty much
Oh,
anybody.
you can buy them.
Yeah, online, you can,
Click that you're 18 or 21 and over, or 18 and over if it's another country, or,
Now, how many places sell this in the city?
we said we had 68.
68 sell vapes?
Now, remember, cause it's
Well,
a,
it
it's
sells
a,
tobacco
tobacco.
products.
Tobacco
of
products.
some
That
sort.
includes, that
Yes,
includes.
Anymore, I think they're
And
almost
these are
always
sold, these are sold in tobacco places too, right?
right. So Kroger's and Myers and all of them sell vapes too? Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do? Yeah.
Not the
CVS, I
grocery
think,
store, but,
stopped.
The city council's way against doing
CVS doesn't
anything
do tobacco.
to limit the amount of storage
So-
and everything, is that correct?
Yeah, so from what I, gathered from the conversation, their biggest concern is, inhibiting business, so the free market, which I definitely understand that, right? We are in a country where we try to keep the regulations down so that we can let the economy roll and let people, engage in business as they wish. And obviously, this is something that we're putting in place so that people 21 and under can't access it, but 21 and over, it has nothing to do with that, right? We're not trying to regulate adults. We wish they wouldn't use them, but that's not the goal. So I think they're just hesitant to say, is it really worth doing that? That was the conversation that I, listened to.
So the shops are supposed to check IDs, obviously,
Mhm.
so.
The law's in
It's-
place,
yeah, so
right? It's not, there's already a law.
They're gonna go online,
Yeah.
or they're gonna go to a place that's not checking, or.
Mhm.
Are they locked up in the grocery stores?
I think all tobacco products should be
Yeah.
behind key, lock and key, but I don't know. I
They
don't-
should be, they're not
They should
always,
be.
yeah, I noticed.
I mean, I'm not looking for them, but I don't know
Right.
where they are.
I think sometimes the concern becomes the corner stores,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And then the corner stores are normally in areas that are depressed and poorer neighborhoods anyway. So, I mean, so if you start looking around town a long time ago, that's where all the little, corner stores, the, what do you call it, the zoning for those kind of places, or strip malls. And so those are usually in places where people can get inexpensive rent, get in there, and then kind of do their thing. And those are the places. I don't think we would be as concerned about the larger retailers that usually, follow the rules as far as carding with alcohol, tobacco, and et cetera. That it would be those smaller areas. And think about this too, we don't have to do it's a lot of things you can do. You don't have to do a percentage, but you could cap it at 68 where we are, so that you don't have any more. So that doesn't impede businesses. So when they were doing a lot of different things in different other cities, they said business owners were in support of it because it's less competition, right? If we have 100, that's enough. If we have 68, that's enough. And so that way you don't have to cap it necessary to try to get down to, remember we talked about the number of 27? You can cap it at,
They're really against that though, right? I mean, the city council.
well, we're not sure.
Yeah,
I said we
think
need to probably have
they
them.
didn't
review
like
to see-
I mean, I've been told that.
Okay, yeah.
They didn't like the 1 in 5,000, I think, is that the, no, what was
It
it?
was
1 in 2,000,
2,000,
yeah.
mhm.
They didn't like the 1 in 2,000 concept because, say you own a shop right now that sells tobacco. You wanna pass it along, you wanna sell it, you wanna sell your business at some point. If we then, say, okay, you're grandfathered in now, but if you go to sell your business at any point, you lose the license, their business is worth less money. So I understand for sure the concern when it comes to that, and, but that's their big thing, right? That their business then becomes less valuable when they go to sell it later on, because they would lose the license if it was not transferable. And so as kind of a big overarching concept, right? We are in the city of Middletown implementing Tobacco 21 retail licensing program. So we're in the education phase, gonna roll it out next year, right?
Mhm.
The question that's being posed next Tuesday for all of us to discuss with council is, do we want to, with that program, put retailer density numbers in place to limit the total amount of tobacco licenses in Middletown? And/or put any zoning restrictions in place to keep tobacco retailers away from, you name it, what is it? Is it schools, is it parks, is it neighborhood, whatever that might be. Right, so those are the two questions on the table, what we have the palette for as a city.
They're the ones though that have the final say, correct?
So did we ever get an answer on who's? That's crack, is that what she said? So that we have to have that answer, right? That's the question, is whose responsibility? I feel like we may have gotten an email,
Did you talk
Jackie.
to Ben? He was supposed to, didn't he say he was gonna call
He was
the
gonna look
mayor?
into it, and I can't remember if we've got a final answer on that.
But
We
I think
kinda-
they'll be there to guide us in
Yeah.
that as well. And also, I think Christina Lotta Feld will be there too to show how other cities did it. It may or may, it makes sense for zoning to be involved, but it may not have to be The ordinance can be, I'm not sure. The
Okay,
ordinance
here's
can
the
be
answer.
put in- Okay, you have it there, good.
Yeah, it's clear as mud. He says, in short, density and buffering are much more functions of zoning than health. In the absence of known authority to the contrary, my strong recommendation would be to enact such regulations as text amendments to the city's development code under section 1226.03, code text and map amendments, rather than through health district legislation. Otherwise, I think there'd be a pretty good risk of exposure to the city, or really the health district, should someone file suit and argue the health district exceeded its actual or implemented authority. As such, any density and or buffering text amendments to the zoning code would need to be initiated or proposed by either council or the planning commission. In turn, the planning commission would hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to council on the text amendments. Lastly, council would hold its own public hearing and determine whether to formally adopt with modifications, or reject planning commission's recommendation on the involved legislation.
So what's
So-
gonna happen here is you're gonna go to this meeting and you're gonna tell them how bad it is, which they already know. And then because for restraint of trade and all this other baloney, they're gonna say no, because they don't wanna go anybody's feet and nothing will change. That's where this is how this is gonna play out.
Good, yeah. I
Right,
think,
I will,
I think the goal of Tuesday is, from a Board of Health perspective, help to educate.
just to tell them.
Because I actually I did not get the feeling like the council was as educated on the harm and the prevalence of youth vaping. It did not seem like they knew that it was as bad of a problem as it is. So, to me, that's probably the board and part of Health's role in this, is to educate the harms of tobacco to our youth, the fact that their brains are developing until 25, that's why the law was created in Ohio. How do we best keep our youth from engaging in this? Is retail density one of the ways? Is zoning one of the ways?
And how much it's decreased in, was it Cincinnati?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So to me, that statistic was about as much as we have to say what its potential impact could be, right? The 27%, the youth reported what, a 27% decrease in the ability to purchase. I think it was something like that. The discussion really is, what are other ways as well, besides retail density and legal, enforcement, what are other ways we can keep our youth from vaping? Because it's not the only way, right? There's programs, and we can also look at, does the city or the state or the county use any of these funds to go back into education and programming surrounding?
That's exactly what we're supposed to do
Right,
with the
and-
money.
And I wasn't 100% sure on the answer, but I
Yeah,
thought I'd let you say that.
That's exactly, the reason why we're licensing, you remember the days that we used to go into the schools and teach all the tobacco, whatever? Now it's really important, and Christina will have a lot of this information, that's why I'm excited, because she's seeing what's going on. They're trying to find ways to help kids quit smoking, because they are unable to use the patch and the nicotine gum. They're not prescribed for children. So they have to find out how can they get off of these nicotine products, because they can't use the prescripted, and you know this more so, doctor, I guess nicotine patches are not prescribed for 18 and under, 17 and under. Yeah.
But
So they're thinking about how do you even, when people are addicted to these things, how do you get them off of it? So those are the things that we're trying to talk to kids or the youth, to what are effective to you. Is it those little widget things? Is it whatever? Because we'll have to start trying to get them off the edge. They can't just go cold turkey if they're addicted to those. So
yeah, you can. That's the only way, that's the best way.
Well, that's what I did.
That's
But
what
I'm
I
just
did.
saying that you gotta give those kids some kind of something. Well, I'm
You
not saying
gotta keep them from starting it.
Right, prevention
That's
is
how
great.
you gotta do it.
That's
Well,
what-
It's very difficult once
Yeah.
they do.
Thanks, Jared. That's what, that's the
So,
most important.
I mean,
That's the most important thing, cause, and we may have some let me try to look in a little deeper too, to see if we have any kids that can even come to talk to. That would be, that started, or maybe in the harm in it that way. All we're trying to do is make it, like you said, prevention, make it more difficult for them to get into that behavior in their minors, in their early years.
Yeah, we definitely need to discuss the fact that the money from the program will go into programming. And what that programming even looks like, I don't know. Who gets the programming money and who implements it?
The money they're talking about is the licensing
Right, and so.
revenue, so we
what
get the
is it?
licensing revenue.
And are we running programs?
The programs would go through Envision Partners, Safety Count, it would go through
Okay,
partners.
and they go into the schools?
They go in the schools, yeah,
Okay,
and they go in the schools, and so it would be that one of those kind of, that's why Interact for Health is helping us. It's a lot of larger foundations helping get these programs, cause they see the damages.
I mean, I remember the Just Say No and the Dare Dog, that dog that came
Dare,
in this, yeah. I remember those. I don't know what they have going on now.
I will.
I'm sure there's other,
I don't know.
don't get into prescription drugs and stuff going on, and
And you know, you think that's hokey, just say no, but think about it. Right now, we don't know where fentanyl is. We don't know what drug is in, what pill is in, what pill is pressed in that looks like a regular pill. So it really is, a lot of parents are crying, saying, my child would never have used heroin, would never use fentanyl. They were just smoking pot, or just, right? And so sometimes if you don't know, that's a good time to come back to, what was, I think that was, Nancy Reagan, right? She's the one that said, just say no. That's why I said, that now makes sense. A long time ago when I was hearing the message, I'm like, say no to everything. Yeah, now it's a good idea. It's a good idea to say no to everything, because I'm old and I'm done.
Because you have too much sense now.
Don't you love
One
it?
time I went with a policeman to the high school for him to do one on smoking pot. And he told them, it was a bunch of young boys. He told them that if they had any pot on them, he was gonna pass around a thing that they could put it in after he finished his lecture. And they should put it in because he would pat down everybody before they left the room, and there were so many in that.
Oh my goodness.
When it was all over, I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Cause at the beginning.
He couldn't do that today.
At the beginning, he asked people to raise their hand if they'd ever smoked before. Nobody, about 2 people raised their hand, and that's when he gave the warning that would happen.
scare tactics.
Just before we finish this session, there is a session on high in plain sight. Is that what it's called? And it's coming up September. I'll get the information out. I'll send it out to you guys. It's a top cop that comes out from Oregon. Everybody says the class is packed and it's really good information, but they just show all the ways that we need to be aware of, that some telltale signs, just like Chandra showed that slide where it's in clear sight how kids are using drugs or doing certain things, and it's supposed to be an excellent. We all were signed up for it, and then he got sick, and so the next time they could reschedule him was in September. So I'll get that out if anybody wants to.
When
It's
is this
free.
meeting with city council? So I know.
Tuesday the 20th, a week from
Next
today.
Tuesday at, was it
20th at 4:30.
Where at?
Council chambers, right? Is that correct? Is that where the
And then
special?
once
Downstairs.
Council chambers are in
In
the
the
basement?
basement, in the basement.
Okay.
4:30, and I know Sally and Ruth said you couldn't be there.
I can,
You can be there?
Yeah.
Okay, yay. And then Sally, you said you could not, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
and
I
everybody
think I
else?
could be there. I don't.
how is the meeting gonna be run, just so we're all under, I mean,
This is our first special meeting that the
Mhm.
health department has ran, so I checked with Amy to see when you guys have ran other joint meetings, like with the schools. And I think it'll be health, board on one side, council on the other side, and we take roll, and we'll take our own minutes. And
Okay.
you can just really conduct it since you're the king of both boards, queen of both boards.
we're in
Queen of
trouble
both
now,
boards.
guys.
You can run it how you want to. I think it would be, in my opinion, she has a small agenda that just went out. In my opinion, it would be nice to have the presentation from Christina and then let full discussion happen and let her answer questions. And we just, let it go back and forth about the concerns about businesses. She's been out front with all of this licensing, so she even has the business concerns and questions ready to be
So
answered.
I mean, just so you guys all feel comfortable, because I hate going into these. I've been to a few of the joint ones where it's all of a sudden like, well, how are we running this?
Right.
Because it's just, we all have our own ways. So I may start it with just like the quick overview that I just said. Like, first of all, the law exists in Ohio. We're putting in a licensing program in Middletown. The questions that we're trying to answer now are, do we want retail density or zoning limitations? Where we believe the authority lies in making those decisions, and that the Board of Health's, discussions have surrounded, how do we, from a health perspective, we don't want our youth to be accessing tobacco, and that's our concern. And so, we want to do everything we can on that end. So we're here today from a health perspective to discuss that. City Council, has discussed the concerns about the business aspect of it, and I can go into what I mentioned to you guys, and then from there turn it into Christina to help give us a little background on vaping and why Ohio even has the law.
Do we have, though, anything that we want them, do we have something that we want them to do, or we just,
Yeah, that would
I
be
mean,
it.
do we have to lead that, or say, at least this is our recommendation, even if you don't follow, we have to say what we recommend?
Right.
We
Yep.
can't just say, well, leave it to you, or,
Yeah,
so we have to decide, don't we, what we want to
You
recommend?
can provide a recommendation to City Council if you want to. You do not have to as a Board of Health, but you can. I mean, it is your role.
Wouldn't it make sense to do that, or no?
I think it does.
And I think, again, we'll be prepared, and I'll reiterate with Christina. She can lay out some things that,
We'd like them to do.
yeah, that can make our already passed ordinance, right? Maybe a little tighter, or maybe a little, and she could give, like, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and then we, at the end of our discussions, then we can recommend number 2, or whatever, and the council may be able to, swallow that too. It could be something they go back and forth. What are some of the things that we can come to agreement on that can help us? Because we know that, we gotta educate people and da-da-da-da.
But they ultimately make the decision, correct?
That's what
they do.
it sounds like, right?
Yeah, because it would go through, it sounds like it would go through the Planning Commission first. So, I mean, in the best case world, we would have Planning Commission at this meeting too, but it's a lot to coordinate. I think that there's a way to have.
I think James said he will be there, though. James
Okay.
Metz,
Okay.
yeah, I think he
He's
said
the
he will
staff
be there.
liaison.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, whatever planning decision, recommendation comes out of there, it's ultimately council's decision, it sounds like, to abide by Planning Commission's recommendation or not. So I think we kind of went to the higher authority, knowing that they ultimately make the decision. It's probably not a bad idea to either invite Planning Commission members to have a discussion or try to do an official meeting with them. It's a lot of work to get these coordinated, but if council has the appetite for it, it would help if we also talk to Planning Commission, because what I've seen happen is, even if council feels a certain way, if Planning Commission is like, oh no, we're totally against it, it may then flip council's decision. So we probably want to at some point talk to, whether it's individually or as a group, the Planning Commission, based on Ben's email.
It could be as simple as capping it at 68. That's a lot right there. I mean, don't try to lower
Yeah,
it.
that may
But
be.
don't try to get 125 of them in there. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
so speaking of that, this is coming at a very interesting time, because last Tuesday, we talked about so we have a moratorium in place against marijuana dispensaries or production. And last Tuesday, we talked at council about council's appetite to lift the moratorium, and council was in favor of it. So, that being said, but council said, well, they only want a certain number of dispensaries. You can see where I'm going with that, right?
Mhm.
So, we have density in place for alcohol sales. We're for sure gonna have a density restriction on marijuana,
Why
Yeah.
not tobacco.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, it's just, when you look at it, it's kinda weird not to, if we have it on the other two, so
Mhm.
that becomes now a little bit more of an argument to have a density.
You know, the interesting thing about all this though is, you know, having done this my whole life, is everybody talks about restraint of trade and you're allowed to do whatever you want to do. The costs and the health that is just astronomical. Because if you, if you look at lung disease and heart disease and all these things, it's all, well, not all, but it's, a lot of it's related to tobacco.
Mhm.
And so, you know, nobody says, you know, well, if you're gonna smoke, you know, it's like anything else, why don't you pay a higher premium, or why don't you pay more, or whatever it
There are
is?
taxes.
But nobody says, you know, oh, well, you're restraining our trade, or we can't do this, but nobody says, well, we're gonna pay we're gonna pay your hospital bill.
Mhm.
And nobody
Very
seems to care about that.
good
but
argument.
It's
Yep.
a tremendous amount of, just think if you didn't have tobacco, what your healthcare costs would be. It'd be a lot
Mhm.
less.
Mhm. Again, prevention is very hard
Yeah.
to sell,
well, sure.
unfortunately, and that is
Mhm.
the best medicine, right? But it's very hard to sell, yeah, and so, well, I mean, I think we just still need to
But
put.
if you bring up the ladder
Right.
costs,
The
like
cost,
he
and that's
mentioned,
usually-
wow, that really
Mhm.
turns it around.
It's at least something to mention
It is
somewhere
definitely.
along the discussion.
Yeah, I definitely think it should.
So I think with this flow, I'm kinda just writing this flow out to make the most effective use of the meeting time, cause we'll have like 50 minutes. Because council then starts at 5:30. 55 minutes is about as max as we can go before we have to like, okay, we gotta start council. So if I do that intro like I talked about, talk about the roles, also Board of Health, City Council, Planning Commission, I'll probably mention that we have density for alcohol and we're talking about it for marijuana, just because I think it is relevant. Then I'll pass it over to Christina, let her give some background on the, well, I'll just let her give her background. I do think it would be helpful to have someone from the schools
I
follow
agree.
her up.
Yep.
And then after that, I think a proposal from the Board of Health, that would be the appropriate time to say, okay, based on all of this, this is what your Board of Health recommends. And then we open discussion. Does that sound useful to you guys?
Do we know what we're recommending?
We don't, so that's where I'm.
No, but I think Christina's supposed to get us her PowerPoint by Friday. And I'll make sure you all get the PowerPoint as well. And one of those slides, I'll make sure that she has some of the options that you can do this, or you can do this, or you can do, in the slide, some of the options.
I really like that clip we saw today too.
Oh, yeah, is she gonna
Very
show
informative.
something like that?
She
or-
knows
quick.
about it, cause I told her about this clip, and she said, oh yeah, that's from the poison, whatever, I mean,
I mean, that was a
oh,
short,
addiction
succinct.
addiction form.
Yeah.
So I could, so we can play that really quick, and then she can just roll into,
Yeah, I think it gets us on the same page about the hazards.
And she doesn't have to go through, I think, don't you agree? She doesn't have to go through everything in depth. She can go through what she's seen around the state, yada, yada, yada. And then the question and answers is for her to have.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and so she can tighten up on those.
Well, they understand what's going on anyway. I mean, come on, they're not.
I don't
You don't
entirely,
think they,
I don't think, honestly, I don't
No?
think most of them even knew that we had a licensing program that was gonna go in place.
oh.
So, I don't know how we kinda, I don't know, but they do now.
Giving them more credit, huh?
Well, there's a lot, arguably, there's so much that goes past council, and I don't know that it, did we, I think we did an official presentation.
Yeah, a long
I
time
think
ago,
they
we went
just
to
kinda
front of
didn't
council.
remember, yeah.
A long time ago.
It hasn't really been brought up since then, so, I don't know.
We may have new council members since
It
that
may,
presentation, too.
yeah.
And we had, remember the article in the paper when we got interviewed right in council chambers? That was,
Mhm.
because we were gonna start licensing, and Dave Burke was a part of that.
Yeah,
You were a
it
part
just
of that?
wasn't on their radar, I
Yeah.
think, until there was a real, potential impact on business more than just needing to sign a form. And so I think that's when it was like, oh wait, I probably should
Pay attention.
pay attention more, yeah. So,
Yeah, they really lean on, we're not trying to hurt businesses, we're trying to protect our youth. And so that's the bottom line. If everybody did the right thing and followed the rules, it's no harm to anything that we're doing, and so.
so then as far as proposal or recommendation, we are not meeting again before then. So with Christina's, we don't know what Christina's presentation is
I
gonna say.
can tell her to get it out to us as soon as possible, even if
Right,
it's
but
not-
we can't then have discussion as a board before then. Is there something that you guys preemptively, if you were to look at her presentation, that would probably fall in line with it that you want to propose? Like, I don't wanna be the one proposing things, cause
I propose a
Yeah.
cap,
Well, go ahead
a cap.
anyway.
no, I really think it's important it comes from you guys, cause I've heard your
Well,
discussion.
they're not gonna wanna cut out.
Yeah.
They're not gonna wanna cut. So
Right,
your
so that's
thing
a-
that you said is probably makes more sense than anything to cap it. Because like you say, there's precedent for it, and maybe that's the best you can do, but that's, like you say, it's better than 100.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, the other way they're not gonna go for that. It's gonna be the butt heads, at least this way you have something.
Is there a way, if someone were to close a shop
You shouldn't be able to open, yeah.
and
Okay.
not sell it? I don't, is that, because, okay, by capping it at 68, if you were to, someone closes a business, their intent, then their license would be worth money, just like an alcohol license would be essentially.
Right, the only people, Carla, tell me if you agree with this, the only people that have businesses worth being concerned about that is those large businesses, which are pretty much exempt from that anyway, because they're selling more than tobacco. So we're talking about those vape stores that we see that has the hookah pipes and
Well,
those
can
kind
you
of things.
just say, we're gonna cap
Right.
it at what's now at 68, if anything closes, no more will be allowed to open?
Yeah, no more of the small ones, because think if
Well,
another
whatever you
Kroger's
wanna
wants to come
say.
to town, they'll be able to,
Whatever you,
because they're selling more than tobacco, a percentage more
however
than
you
tobacco,
wanna word
yeah.
it, but wouldn't that make sense? So
So
at
let's
least
say
over
you're-
time, maybe you have some attrition.
Maybe, let's say you're Main Street Market, I'm making that up. You sell vaping products, you're retiring, kids don't want the company, you're selling the building, you're going to sell your business. With that is your tobacco retail license. So are they allowed to then transfer that to someone else, making their business sale worth more money than if they didn't have that license?
No,
That's where council is gonna have a problem.
Now, see, to me, I would say that would be yes,
I would
only
say
because
yes.
if it's 68, I'm selling mine, and then we go down to 67, but I give it back to them, it's still at 68. The
Yeah.
only way,
okay, so
it-
I'm not.
yeah,
I'm
the
not
only
Right.
way,
minority.
yeah,
Well, I'm just telling you that's where they're gonna have a problem,
because we're not titrating down, right?
Well,
It-
council is saying then you are taking money out of that business's worth at the end. So I'm building a business right now selling Kleenex.
Yeah, but your business is built on making people unhealthy.
But is
You can
that,
say that about McDonald's, you can say that about a lot of places.
I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm just saying, I know that
Well,
that's gonna
McDonald's will
be.
kill you when you're hopefully 60 or 70, the other will kill you when you're 50,
yeah.
so.
Okay,
I don't
so,
know.
but if we cap it at 68,
Okay,
that
well.
means that if a business leaves, they can transfer their license, it's still 68.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But now a new business comes to town that wants to be a corner market or whatever, a corner market, they can't sell tobacco
Well, I'm
to
obviously in the
69.
minority, so,
right?
okay, if you
Well, it's
guys-
not, from what I'm hearing, I don't think that you're in the minority of the thought process here in the Board of Health. I just think we
Out
know
there,
what
it's not
council's
gonna go.
hang up is.
Okay, well,
Mhm.
We can try, right, we can make, if the Board of Health wants to make the attempt to say, we would like to see it get down to 50, I don't know, whatever that is. We know where the argument's gonna be, right? They're gonna come and say, well, then that business isn't worth as much money. And then we're just like,
Okay.
yep, true, and then where does the conversation go? Then ultimately, it will be council's decision to say yes or no to it, which is okay. That can still be Board of Health's recommendation. It's not wrong. if you wanted to put one, you know, we could have two, right? Like you're saying, Christina might have one that says, okay, 68 now, we wanna see it get down to X number, which is our ultimate maximum number. And as these businesses go out, we don't want them to be able to transfer, and it gets down to this number.
We
Okay,
don't have
alternatively-
we don't have any idea though how many of these places like open and then close, or do they, I mean,
Well, the goal of the licensing program is that we do know who's open and selling.
We're gonna start monitoring that, because before vaping
so
stores.
you'll know if people sell the business or they close the
Mhm.
business, so you'll have some idea.
Mhm.
Well, I guess you can always go back and change it too, or can you, once you,
The ordinance?
yeah.
Oh, sure. So, I'm hearing that, like, Board of Health wants a little more restrictive, and maybe that's a recommendation, but alternatively, 68 is it. If you sell your business, it goes with the license, and we keep it at 68 forever and always, and at least we're not getting to 100. And it's better than
They'll
not.
have a hard time denying that, like you say, because
Right,
they've
yeah.
held
Right.
the other, I mean, they've got
Mhm.
precedent for it, so.
Right,
Mhm.
and so, I mean, to me, that
Yeah,
sounds like kind of the
better.
two that we have that are realistic, and at least it's not, it's like, we don't want that many, but we also realize that there's business
Okay.
aspects. And then the other question would be the zoning the restrictive zoning, so I don't, and maybe that would be, I don't know if there's any stats about that. Does it
Well-
help?
I don't think that's gonna make any, what's the difference? That thing about, oh, it's near a school, so what? It's in the school. I mean,
Yeah.
they're doing, you know.
It-
why-
But it is
all
more
of that-
government oversight
All
and a
that
lot
is
of
about
work.
access, it's just usually
That'll
if it's,
just,
if it's harder to get to, I mean, and it's just one layer. You know what I mean, it's just one layer, if it's harder to get to, if you have to get carded, if harder to get to, I mean, if you got a hookup that you go in the store and they know you're underage and they always sell to you, it's just easier access, plain and simple. But, I mean, it's just probably just one of the layers.
Do
Just
you,
one of-
so as a Board of Health, do you feel like you want to make any recommendations on zoning?
Carla, did
I don't.
Hamilton have anything in theirs about
They do.
parks and schools and that kind of stuff? Yeah.
It's just keeping, oh, it's a
They don't have
thousand
density,
feet or
though.
so.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's the
they can't have
buffering
it
part,
done on
yeah.
schools, they still haven't got it done, so it's.
So, I mean, hey, look, that could be a card like, hey, look, we don't need to make too much government oversight. If we do this, we
If
feel
we're
it's.
capping, what's the need for the zone?
They can't open anymore.
Right.
Unless, you know, it's wherever they're at now, that's.
Well, it would keep the transfer, so a license could be transferred and moved closer to a school.
Oh, that's true.
But I mean,
But what's the likelihood?
I
it's a
don't know.
lot of work to implement that also from a plan, we've gotta put it in the code and the zoning and the,
Yeah,
I'm looking at how much money it costs from a legal perspective.
Don't do that.
I say just cap as a
Okay.
recommendation.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Now, council could say they want zoning, I don't know,
Well, good for them.
yeah, I doubt it, I doubt they're gonna do that, but,
Yeah, don't bet on it.
yeah, okay. Well, good, that was a good, very helpful discussion, thank you for, I think our meeting will be a lot more effective having a plan.
Yeah.
in
Well,
place.
you got it. You can't
Yeah,
just let them decide.
okay. I'm going to write all that up after. Anything else on vaping? This is probably the most productive Board of Health meeting in a long time, though. I feel like it was really good. Thank you, guys. Okay, let's go into new business then. What do you say? No travel authorizations. We have an agreement between Butler County General Health District and City of Middletown Health. That's for,
Yes, can I stop
Oh,
one
yes.
thing with, the only other thing I wanna mention,
Oh,
old
I
business,
missed
that's
old
okay,
business,
old business,
sorry. I
yeah,
saw
'cause we
Tobacco
did Tobacco
21 and
21, we
moved
did
on.
that discussion, but, FAB, we have a CHOB meeting tomorrow, and we're gonna decide on our priorities, and so that's it, we'll be coming to you when we get that all wrapped up.
Okay.
And getting ready to start our focus groups, so, okay,
okay,
that's it.
sorry about that.
No, you're good, and then we discussed Tobacco 21, so we're good.
Okay. Okay, so the agreement between Board of Health, Butler County General Health District and City of Middletown Board of Health for the FAT.
Okay, So, PHET, again, stands for Public Health Emergency. That's the grant. We've been receiving this grant since 2001. So the 9/11 had made all the emergency preparedness stuff happen. And in this grant, it comes out every year, July 1st, and Butler County receives the grant, gives it to subcontractors, Middletown City, Hamilton City, and we have to do deliverables. And so that's when we do our counter measures and our practicing our emergency plans. That's when we do our, if we're doing a pandemic plan, if we're doing a tornado plan, if we're doing a earthquake plan, all of that is underneath these deliverables. How do you call out your emergency staff? Who's in succession of leadership, et cetera. So in this document, you'll see in those attachments all the things that we have to do to get the money. And so we receive this every year. We approve this grant. End of June, starts July 1st. And I think I highlighted 24,000. What's in my stuff here? Deliverable details. I think it's 24. Here it is. $24,361.62.
Any comments about the FAT agreement? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion is passed. Board member open topic discussion. So, back to tobacco 21. I wrote down my notes and realized there's a couple questions that we still need to figure out. On the first option, we need to come up with what the number is that we want to get down to.
What is it now?
Well, it's gonna vary between now and, January, because places open and close, we're around 68 or 70 right now.
So there's another question I have on that too, because if we say we're gonna cap it at whoever gets their license in January, you know what's gonna happen? We're gonna end up with 100. Because who wouldn't go buy one? I mean, as a person who wants to make money, I would go pay for a license right now.
What's that cost?
Whatever.
250.
How much?
250.
It'll be well worth more than 250 when you can't buy one anymore.
Well, they won't be able to buy one until, what, October, November, December.
Is that an
But you know what I'm
ordinance, is that
saying?
an ordinance too, what it cost? I mean, how do they come up with the 250?
That was our decision as a city, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Hamilton, we wanted to be, Butler County wanted to be across the board having the same T21 license. So businesses wouldn't say, oh, we can go to Hamilton for $15, Middletown's charging $250. So we wanted, when we rolled it out and we met with all the Tobacco 21
You ought to
people.
make it 1,000.
I was just gonna say that.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. But, question, Carla. Most stores, is this a yes or, true or false? Most stores in Middletown, retail stores in Middletown sell tobacco.
Retail stores?
Yeah, I mean, when I say like United Dairy, the corner stores, the Kroger's, the Myers. So this would have, if new ones tried to get a license, they
depends on what
already
you're
have to be a facility, right? Or not? I'm trying to work this out in my head. For people that wanna buy a license, you and I just can't buy a license right now. We have to already be a retailer, don't we?
Open up a new shop.
We have
Yeah,
to,
you could, yeah.
Do you have to have a physical location
I
or
think
just
we
an
all, yeah,
LLC?
see?
No, a location.
Right, a location, right?
Mhm.
And so that location would have to go through upstairs,
Yeah, zoning and building.
so that means that they.
Okay,
see what I
so
mean?
it's not as easy
it's
as
not
opening
easy
a
buying
as-
company and buying a
Yeah, we just can't
license.
have a license in our pocket. That's what I was trying to say, how,
We still may end up with a
We
bunch
still
of
could.
VIP vapes before
yeah,
January.
yeah.
Can't you say the licenses are capped at 68, so there's nobody else can get any more?
That's what I would think.
We could, we'd have to, so it would have to
Well-
go into place, would it be a moratorium on the opening of any more
Yes.
tobacco? So, see, this gets
Along with-
more complicated,
Well,
but we could do it. It would be a temporary moratorium until,
no, it's a permanent.
well, because once you implement the number of licenses, then you don't need a moratorium anymore.
Well, whatever.
But a lot of businesses, they're opening up right now, if they open up we may or may not know which, because I don't know what the guidelines are be, because if you have a vape store, we don't know that a vape store is
Right,
open.
until we have the program.
Well, unless they sell, yeah, until we have the program, or unless they sell other items.
But somebody does know.
Building, because if they get their CO, they
Communicating with the
have to,
city.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, the building would know,
yeah,
and they can flag it for us to let us know.
yeah.
Wouldn't they? I mean, couldn't they? I mean, that's the way it should work. The city should be talking to each other as far as to making sure that you're having those, I mean, wouldn't you think?
We only know of the stores that sell tobacco right now because they sell other items, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, and
Paraphernalia.
because we've done the inventory,
Big-
yeah.
well, yeah, we've done the
And we-
inventory,
yeah.
but we
Right.
already knew most because they're licensed as a retail food service operation. A retail food establishment, excuse me.
But the vaping shops aren't.
Right, so we just did
Inventory, we
Inventory
had to
of
go
those.
around to look at.
How would we
Which
know
one?
if VIP vapes wanted to open, they would have to go to the building department?
Yeah.
correct.
And what would they go there saying that they're doing?
Well, they have a checklist. I don't know if they,
Of
They
what
would
you're
sell
selling.
vaping.
They have to have what they're selling, because that's when they alert.
Is that a category? Because we would have to put a moratorium on a category, right?
Tobacco products, I think, because,
Tobacco.
yeah, because in my opinion, I think when they go upstairs, Carla's gonna check, but when they go upstairs, you have to know what they're selling so that you can nudge other departments.
Right.
So if they're selling food, they would say
do
you have to
a
check with
checklist
health.
for food.
If they're selling, you know what I mean, different, like if they're cosmetology, they have to have a license for cosmetology.
That doesn't come through us.
That doesn't come through us, yeah, so it's different. I mean, so they have a checklist upstairs. We should know what a new business is selling.
Okay, so
We
the
should.
retail
Retail.
licensing goes into effect in January?
We as far as city, Carla, I said city should know what a new business is selling. And what was the question?
January first is when you have to have your license to sell tobacco in Middletown?
Yes, yes,
January.
first.
January first.
Mhm.
Okay, so in conjunction with keeping it at a
That's
certain
like a
number,
business description.
we would need a moratorium, a temporary moratorium from as soon as
20th.
possible until January first of 2024, it would end. And
Okay.
at that point, the retail licensing would be essentially the moratorium,
Right,
if you
the-
will,
Yeah,
on a new
that's what
business.
you're
Right.
Because otherwise, I do believe we are gonna get VIP vapes coming in, buying some tiny little buildings in Middletown to get their licenses. I for sure would do that if I had money. Not that I wanna get children, but I'm just thinking that those companies aren't thinking about health, obviously. They're thinking about money, so I'm not gonna mention that in the order of operations until we get to the end, because it is an obvious need, like, with the goal being that this needs to go into place, and I don't wanna muddy the water on what the goal is, but I will mention before we finish the meeting that it would need to have a moratorium in place with it. Just because if we agree that that's where we wanna go, that needs to also occur.
Well, if you want 68, you have to have some way to keep it at 68.
Until January,
Yeah, I
which,
mean, you
yeah,
can't just
Right.
yeah,
say, I want 68, and then there's 100.
And waive your one.
right. Okay, so then,
And I have to check, it's 68, 70, I can't.
yeah,
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
your
Whatever
current
it is.
count
Yeah.
is, yeah. We would have that. Okay, so that gets back to then the first, recommendation. What is the number? If we were to say you can't transfer your license if your business closes, what is the number of licenses we want to get down to the point where if someone closes, they could transfer it? It's a
There's
population
no
density
number,
thing.
there's no number.
Well,
You
your
want it to
first-
zero.
Well, okay, you can.
No, but
set
you
that
don't
if you
have,
want.
but you're not saying it's going to zero, but that's where you'd like it to go, so.
Is that
You
the
don't
Board of
wanna
Health's
say if it gets down to 50, well, we're gonna let you have 18 more. If it gets down to 50, it's 50. I
So,
mean, you wanna theoretically go to zero, right? Or,
I mean, we'll never, that's not even realistic.
no, I know, but I'm saying, why, if it gets, even if it gets down to 65 or 63, why would you wanna say, well, okay, but we'll let you go back to 68 or 70?
Okay, we're talking about
You're
two
right.
different recommendation routes, right? We've got the one that we agree, okay, we're gonna concede as a Board of Health, 68 it is, it'll always be 68, no more. the one that's even sweeter from a health perspective is it's 68 now, but if your business closes, we don't want more than one for every 1,000 citizens in Middletown. Maybe that's our number. And if your business closes and you're above 52 for now, we have more than 52, you cannot sell your license. Once we get under that amount, then you're able to sell it because we're under the 52 in Middletown. That's our better recommendation. Of course, you can say we want none, but that's never gonna go
I
anywhere.
wouldn't do
so-
it that way, because then you're limiting them again, and they're not gonna like that, they'll be hostile to that. Why don't you just say, if it goes down and you can't sell it, nobody wants to buy it, then that's where you're at. If somebody else wants to buy it, in other words, leave it at where it is, but I mean, if they don't sell it,
I don't know that that's implementable.
they'll swallow that better than the other.
I don't even know how you do that.
I think probably capping it at 68, and if it falls below, you just let it go. I
Then
mean,
let it go.
that's just yay, because we're just making it, we don't have to say anything. We're not trying to get it lower than 68. But if it falls lower than 68, that's a yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna ultimately try to get it down to 50, but if it's only 50, that's yay.
That's
I mean,
what
it
it
might
is.
just be what it is, because we were doing such a good job.
You're not making them
And
go
they're
to
not
50,
making the
you're
money,
just letting
and
them
they're-
go wherever it goes.
Right, just let it go wherever it
Under
goes.
that number. That's easiest.
And then we do the hard work of
So
trying to
question,
prevent it.
okay, okay, so in that, I'm just thinking this through. 68, it's at 68.
Or 70.
Somebody sells, or somebody closes. Can somebody apply for another license?
Yes.
Yes,
But that other license may still exist because the company hasn't closed itself. I guess they would have to continue to pay for the license.
right,
after they're
then
not
they,
open, it
they
would be
can't,
closed
if the
for a
license
new
stays in,
license.
if
Yeah.
the license stays in power or whatever, then you can't.
But like
Because
an
the license
alcohol
is-
license.
Cause the
let's-
license is issued to,
If you closed your restaurant and then you're not open for 6 months and you decide that you wanna open again, you have to reapply for a license and you have to go
So
through
is
all
that,
that.
is that the case? Is there a 6 month, is there like a time limit?
It's after you're closed.
Well, like, for example, I'm just thinking of one that I know transferred, an alcohol license, right? Gracie's closed.
they can put theirs in escrow license, right?
So, yeah, I don't know, but Miss Jade's ended up buying
Buying
it
it.
after a certain amount of time. So I'm just looking at, see where I'm going with that? Like, from an alcohol license perspective, I know it holds a good amount of value.
Okay, so wouldn't it be the case, if this is the case, if a store closed and they no longer have their, they have their tobacco license, but they're closed, and then another store opens and takes that spot of 68, then if this person wants to do anything with their license, they're not allowed until it's a spot.
Right.
Cause it's
But they
already
paid
filled.
for it.
It doesn't
For that
matter, they
location.
closed. And so, yeah, if they close, so they can't, do anything with that license. If they're closed and no longer, that's just like we do with the food or anything, they have to reapply.
It's not in
And if they
perpetuity
reapply-
for the
Alcohol
rest of your
license doesn't
life,
work
for the
that
rest
way.
of the-
I think a good point that she's making is how long, we need to decide like how long are they closed? Like what if they just close down for a month and then somebody applies
That's all
for
I'm
it? Or
saying.
what if they're closed for 6 months, but they're just taking a hiatus cause they went to
Like,
Mexico
if
to
It's
they-
like
visit?
a food license, well, I guess it depends on how they end up writing it, but the food license is for that location, it's not to that it's not for
But
that
an
person.
alcohol license
It's
is
is
not for the location. It can be moved.
right.
Okay, what if we did this? This might be easier. Our license is gonna go January 1, 24 to January 1, 25. And so anybody open up a new store that wants a tobacco license, if there's none available, they have to wait until the next calendar year that we license it.
Or buy it
And-
from somebody
Yeah.
that's got one.
So if they fail
Yeah.
to pay the licensing fee,
Right, then it's
then they
open.
lose it.
Right, they lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so if somebody's gonna open up a store like in July, well, can I sell tobacco? Well, all of our licenses are full, but you can check back January 1. And January 1, whoever doesn't pay their
Right.
license by
Right.
what, January 31st, when is it? No, January 1 is late. It's
December
January 1.
31st.
December 31st, then we'll find out who's open then, right?
Yeah.
And then
Is that how-
that'll make people
so
scurry to get
failure
their
to
license
pay-
fees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Failure to pay, okay, does a failure to pay, is
You
our
lose the
recommendation that a failure to pay, opens a slot, where a
Yes.
failure to pay loses, we don't have 68, we're down to 67.
No,
It's both.
no, we're gonna, I thought we were gonna
It's-
leave
it's
it.
both.
It's
And
both,
so to-
yeah,
it's
well,
both.
yeah,
It's both.
if nobody takes it, then.
Failure to pay, you're
Right.
down
Right.
67, and now you got an opening, so you can get back up to
I know it's-
68.
Okay,
And
so
if
someone else
nobody
could
takes it,
open.
then
But I
it's
think it depends
67.
on how they
Yep.
For that,
write the
yeah.
ordinance.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then that person would have to wait, it might be 67 for 6 months. We don't advertise that we have open spot. It's-
Right, she's talking about the license.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
Did-
if I'm
I
2
mean-
weeks late paying my license, you guys are gonna tell me I can't have a license, but
Right.
we'll let people pay
So
late.
So
for
that's
food, so
that's
a
a,
nightmare.
probably a legal question.
Legal, yeah.
Yeah, at
It's
what
different
point
on
is
how
in
they do the
default?
license.
So it could be that we open, new applications are approved on March
February
1st,
first.
I don't know.
well, yeah, but they don't get to sell food, do they,
Yeah. What
While
do you
they're
mean?
late.
without a license?
Yeah, well, they
Food,
do.
but not tobacco.
Cause you have to go through the process of the legal process.
But everybody's late, like on pools, tattoos, I mean, they're
Right.
all late. So if you tell me, oh, now I gotta close my business.
Well, you're late.
Well, like you can't sell
Well,
tobacco.
they turn off your water when you're late.
Tattoo places and food places.
Maybe they turn
This
your water when
is
you're.
probably from, the legal can help us with that, that's a nuanced thing.
Yeah,
But I feel more comfortable now that we have, so we wanna scrap the get down to a certain density number. And our recommendation is what we just talked about.
Yeah, but with that density, you gotta decide on where you, at what point, as for this, the tobacco, cause if you got a new speedway that comes in, you're saying they can't get a license. So you're gonna have to have some kind of guidelines of what tobacco, not tobacco, what's the word I want?
what kind of percentage of sales, what kind of retailer?
Yeah, what kind of retailer, yeah.
So any retailer that brings in more than X amount of money.
Yeah, so you.
No,
I was gonna say, those
No,
are
I don't know,
bringing a
yeah,
lot.
that's
Yeah,
another,
so,
that's
'cause
another
you
question
can't,
too.
if,
Right, we
if
can't
I-
open any more gas stations in Middletown.
well, yeah, and I know that there's one.
Well,
That
company-
is a problem, I didn't
Yeah.
think
Well,
about that.
there you
So
go,
you
that might be
gotta-
some, but you know
so
what, that's
most-
another thing too, Carl, I'm sorry to
Good
interrupt you.
point.
But look at this, so many people that have thought out plans are talking about these kind of things, right? Cause that's how you get the controls in there, like you said, you don't want any more. So usually, people that are planning out things usually say, that might be the answer. Because you don't want another speedway coming in, because you wanna control some of the things that come in, or do we not? Is that not what we wanna do?
But
I
now
mean,
we're inhibiting another business type, which is,
you have the right to inhibit business types.
right, but are we trying to limit are we trying to limit access to fuel?
Yeah, but there's no limit, there's no problem getting gas here. You're not.
Well, that's
limiting-
that's not a Board of Health thing to make a
Right.
decision
No,
on,
but
right?
you
That's-
just said, that are we, we haven't limiting gas. I mean, there's no problem getting gas.
Yes, cause we should have electric vehicles.
Well, okay, so why don't we have,
Right, I
and
mean-
this is just an argument thrown out there, why don't we have more strip clubs? Why don't we have more massage parlors? Why don't we have, sometimes communities want to limit what comes into the community, right? Not saying it's bad, good, or different, it's just what your values are and what your standards are. And so you can do that sometimes too. I'm just throwing that out there. So when we talk about these communities that have these roundabouts and these communities that have certain things, it's because they only wanna bring certain things to that community or whatever, and they want some control over it. So I don't know where the difference is, that's my argument.
Mhm.
I don't know what the difference is, a business is a business. So if we're just trying to get revenue, then why don't we
Yeah, do
open up?
anything.
Why don't we open up and do everything?
It's
And
what
we're
you
just trying
want
to
your
get-
community
but
to
if-
be.
But if we want values, and I had told somebody else, it's as simple as this, I said, what if I said, me and my husband, and we have kids, and I said I wanted to make sure my kids go outside and play as much and be as creative as possible, so we wanna limit TVs. So when it comes down the road that you get a free TV, the easy answer should be no, we don't want a free TV. Because our values are, we wanna be outside doing, so when we start setting up what we really want in the community, we should be able to start putting controls in there. And it's not government, it's just what our community has said they wanted. Controls to make our community equal what we're trying to get to, right? And so I'm good for that, but I'm sure some people would probably like massage parlors.
So here's
I
an
know we
easy
have
way.
2 new gas stations coming on the east end, and, so you.
Keep hearing, I haven't seen anything happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it possibly, but, anyway, and then you have, I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, we have those.
So,
that
yeah,
are-
so we
Who
have to
else,
work together.
here's an easy way to look at this, who else has retailer density in place in Ohio?
That's a Christina question.
Because they're gonna have something in there that addresses this.
Yeah.
And we don't have to start from scratch.
And I think they did percentage of sales was one thing that they looked at, so.
So, can we get
and-
that, because I think that's gonna help us with it,
Okay.
I think this is way above,
Yeah.
Or-
it's a it's a really good question.
And it's good discussion because it's not, I don't think it's a right or wrong, it's opinions and it's fact and it's based on, you know what I mean? So I think it's good discussion.
Yeah, let's get,
Are we on annex Linden Township? They have a bunch of.
we can get into that,
Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I think one way they did that was the percentage of sales and.
So yeah, if we can figure out who else has some version of this in place and how they're addressing that question. And that would help us when we ultimately draft whatever if we draft maybe, but yeah, okay. Let's, I feel good that we can, there were some definite questions that needed answered.
You have
I started to
something
write
you
it
can
down,
tell
so-
them.
Okay,
Be interesting to see what they say.
okay, thanks guys, sorry. Whew.
No, I think it's good discussion, because ultimately, we all have to settle on what we decide. And then we have to work hard in educating, and hopefully we'll put people out of business, right? So we will have to.
Let's
I
not
mean,
quote that,
well, not
but
put people,
yeah.
put selling of tobacco and unhealthy products
Hopefully
out
we'll
of
make our
business.
community healthier.
Yeah, there you go, there you go.
That's
what I intended
that's
on
the
doing.
newspaper quote, okay.
Sorry.
Well, until the federal government starts regulating vapes, more effectively, then we have to do what we have to do,
Right,
so.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm all for local controls over federal anyway in many cases, so, sounds good. We'll do what we want. All right, Jackie, you have any?
I have nothing.
Health commissioner?
No, I
You had
think,
some good stuff in your report.
17 Strong, a symposium is in Hamilton on June 24th. I am going and some of the ambassadors are going. This is supposed to be, about how communities connect and how to engage people or whatever, so we're just trying to get more information. If any, I think I sent that out to the board, but if I
wanna go
didn't.
so bad, but I'm out
Yeah,
of town that
I
day.
can bring you back all the information. If you guys wanna go, I'll make sure. If I talk about something that hasn't been sent out to you, cause I forget from the time I get it, let me know, but I'll send that, I'll just put a star to send that out to the board again, if you're interested in it. It's a half day and then they have a working lunch, and so. And met with the ambassadors last night, they're excited, had the largest group we've had since we started with the Ohio Is Grant, and they're excited because I think we're gonna try to get the, Community Development Department to meet with them to talk about nuisances. how
Development
to-
services?
Yeah, services.
Mhm.
How to meet with them, tell them how to report it, how to, how to report nuisance, what is, responsibility of a landlord, what's the responsibility of the homeowner, what's the responsibility, those kind of things, so. And
Ooh,
then.
if we could record that meeting, that
Oh.
would be good for the whole city.
Yeah, we can try to do that. We have a camera, so I can try to do
mean,
that, that would be.
Because they're not the only ones who, like, it can help them get their own message out.
Cause a lot of them are talking about the bushes that's up, sometimes they can't see around the corner, and is it the city's responsibility to cut down the bushes, but if the bushes come from the property, is it the property owners? But if the property owner is in California, is it the tenant? You know what I mean, so they have some of those kind of things. And we will be at the farmer's market this Wednesday. Farmer's market start, the health department's gonna be at all the farmer's markets, and they're gonna be giving out healthy information, how to store your vegetables and your fruits, how to use them, even when they look like they're going bad, how you can still use them safely, cutting away from the parts that may not be looking good or whatever. How, if they're getting ready to go bad, how you can freeze them and use them, they lose their prettiness, but they are still nutritional. Or how to share it with your neighbor. Like if you're going on a trip and you have things in your refrigerator that are good now, share it with your neighbor. So they're gonna be talking about that too.
That's at the farmer's market?
At the farmer's market.
And that's on when?
Wednesday, it starts this Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday, 3 to 7, I think. And the bus station parking lot. And our ambassadors wanna be there too, just to show, some connectivity to the city and stuff. So that's what's going on in my world, I think.
I did, I don't know if y'all, saw, I heard this too, access counseling and the gathering.
Oh, yes. So, two things real quick. Access Counseling, is the one that operates the gathering over there, kinda have the people in there, and they were told, to finish up and tie up their activities by September 2nd, so they will not be there. And then the syringe exchange, last day will be the end of August. So we will, be watching closely,
For
Chandra and I.
Hamilton to pick it up?
Yeah, we are hoping somebody else will pick it up in Butler County and
So there'll be no
or.
more.
Huh?
End of August, you
It will
said?
not, yeah, end of August. Yeah, they're, allowed to stay there through August, and then the gathering closes September 2nd. So we will then be able to see, you know, we'll have the fall coming up, winter coming up, and Shalom plans on opening for their emergency winter shelter. But we will then have to just wait and watch. Our responsibility is start watching any kind of increase in infectious disease, communicable diseases, et cetera. So
Are we
we'll watch
waiting
those
for
kinds of things.
someone to pick that up, or we're just done?
I think we're probably waiting, if it were me, I would be waiting for someone to pick it up.
Okay.
In Butler County, find another activity, find another location and try to, but
Who's coordinating that discussion? Is that,
the owner of the.
syringe exchange?
Yeah, the owner of the syringe exchange is Butler County Health Department,
Right,
actually.
okay.
And they work with the Regional Harm Reduction Coalition, and the Mars Board gives them funding. So that's where the funding comes from. And Interact from Health gives them some funding for the activity. So all the funding was out. The only thing we really did is have control over the location and control over how it operates. Like if we didn't like how things were being done, we had some
Right.
control over that. But other than that, it was ran by the Butler County
County.
staff and.
I think if you don't give a date, like, hey, we're gonna stop this by then, it'll just keep going. I
Mhm.
think giving a date
Right.
motivates them to find something,
Mhm.
another place.
Yeah,
So-
someone said, oh, because of money? I said, nope, not because of money. We have funding. It's just because we just need some of the, you know, responsibility to, and maybe it'll come to a head. Unfortunately, it's always hard to backpedal, but that's what'll have to be done because people sometimes just accept the controls, I guess, until they're just not there. I tell you myself, I have, I'm on Main Street and I have this little place across the street from me that has a lot of unhoused individuals or whatever, and I see them all the time get off the bus and go over there and lay around. We don't know if that'll be more populated because the locations, there's camps throughout the city sometimes, so we just don't know if it'll be more populated there and we'll get some other complaints,
Because
or
of
if not,
the gathering, you mean, or because of the syringe exchange?
all the above, yeah.
If you haven't, looked behind the gathering recently, they, made them get all of their belongings out because they were putting new carpeting in the churches. Just have a look.
Oh, really?
It's been like this for 2 weeks and growing. It is a massive trash dump
I drove by there the
and
other
people.
day.
Where's that?
Where's this?
It's really bad.
Behind the
Where?
gathering.
Behind the gathering.
Yeah, downtown.
They have code violations in place and they're gonna for sure fail to comply and I don't know what's gonna happen.
Because they're putting down new floors, and so they probably had to empty everything out of there, and they had, so we'll see, to be
Okay.
continued.
Okay.
That's it, thank you. And
Yeah,
thanks for
yeah, I
reminding me
just
after
noticed
that.
those were
Yeah.
some big ones.
Mhm.
Okay. Chandra.
Okay. So the medical report, for communicable diseases, we had one case of Campylobacter last month, 27 chlamydia, 1 coccidioidomycosis, 3, CPCRAs, which is a multi-drug resistant, bacteria,
Oh, really?
12 gonorrheas, 1 Hep B, and 6 Hep Cs. As far as the Hep Cs and Hep B were concerned, those were found through screenings for folks with high-risk
Below building.
life activities.
With a
So
bunch of graffiti.
glad they were going in and getting screened and being identified so they can receive treatment.
People live in there, I think, or is it?
course, COVID numbers are way down, which we're all happy to see, and, vaccines, are still going strong, around the region. We are still offering our, Moderna bivalent booster shots the first and third of, Thursdays of each month, from 12 to 1 here at the health department. Our numbers have come down for interest, but that's not uncommon over the last couple of years during the summer months anyway, because, you know, the numbers continue to drop during those months because everybody's outside. And we're just waiting to see what the newest recommendations or newest type of vaccines may be come fall. And we'll push out any of those activities when we find out.
Great, thank you. I guess we didn't do medical director.
That was the same.
That was
Same, all in one,
Unless you
okay.
did the disease report,
All in
yeah.
one. All right, Carla, what do you have for environmental health?
We've actually, approved the plans for Arby's, which is to be located on Verity Parkway.
More fast food.
Yeah.
Arby's is going to Verity?
Yes, right there.
They're building, correct? It's
Yes.
a brand new building.
Yes, there's a vacant lot right there by, Speedway, not Speedway, I'm sorry. Subway.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
On the
Yeah.
left.
Food
Yeah.
court.
Yeah, very small one, I don't think it's gonna be dine-in, I don't believe, might be just a drive-through, it's a pretty small lot, but anyway. Mango Punch, which is a mobile, we license and approve that, we have a total of 16 mobiles within the city.
Can you, so for mobiles,
Mhm.
obviously they go throughout wherever,
Mhm.
right? Can they cross state borders?
They would have to probably get a license within that
Okay, so the city,
jurisdiction.
is basically licensing based on state regulations for
Yes,
those?
they can go anywhere in the state of Ohio, and the health departments will recognize their license.
Okay,
Of
and
course,
so
they have to follow all other guidelines.
What
like
makes
zoning.
them need to get a license from Middletown?
If they reside in Middletown
So it's
or business in Middletown.
the owner
Uh-huh.
resides,
Uh-huh.
or the
Or the business, they could, yeah, if they have
Either
a business,
one?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about
Yeah.
that, 'cause
Address, the
Yeah.
address has to be a Middletown
And
address.
what are the things that are, is it have to abide by, I assume, the same as a food service establishment, or is it significantly different?
Food safety wise, yes, but and they have to have commercial equipment, so there are similarities, but of course there's design for mobiles, but yeah, pretty
Okay,
much.
cause I've seen wide varieties, like Miss Jade's has one now, and
She doesn't have a mobile,
Okay,
she.
she getting temporary
she
food
got a
license?
temporary
Okay, that's
for
what I
that.
figured probably was happening with that one, okay.
Yeah, she didn't have a license, but the guidelines are, I mean, it depends, cause there are different types of mobiles. You can have a breakdown mobile, which means you can take all your equipment, put it in a truck, and then take it out of the truck and then set it up. It may look like a temporary, but the difference is that equipment is commercial grade. So
You see
that's
those
what-
at those big festivals,
At
they're,
big
they're
festivals.
sweet,
Yeah.
they're really nice.
So everybody
Okay.
think a mobile, it just means it's portable,
Mhm.
is what it is.
Doesn't
So
have to be
you can
on
take
wheels.
all your equipment out, it has to be water under pressure equipment, it has to be commercial, and you can take that equipment out of the truck and put it, set it up under a tent, it could be, you could drive it, or you can pull it,
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
so, yeah. Pack Worldwide, I think I mentioned that last time, we actually reviewed their plans, another micro market, we have about 7 of those now, that's the new trend now, sort of like vending operations. As Jackie mentioned about felt theft deliverables, we've completed all our felt theft deliverables. I think it has to be done by, it was June 30th.
Mhm.
We've actually completed a little early. So the monies that we received from that was a total of $22,491.84. So we met all of those. And just continuing with training, through the workforce development grant. Janae's gone to have had a lot of, ERC training, 300, 400. Chandra, have you?
I did mine years ago.
Years ago, okay. Other than that, just maintaining inspections, of our swimming pools and, food service operations, so. And that's it.
With that said, too, with trainings, Olivia trained the staff, she went through a wonderful training. I was so pleasantly surprised she's good. I said, you should be a teacher. She was really good, and she had us all laughing and informed, and she will be doing a mini training for the board, just in emergency preparedness plan, just the plans in general. I told her we really need an earthquake plan. It's something just laying heavily on my heart that we just really need to start looking at earthquake emergencies. We are on a fault, FYI, and we usually plan for everything else, right? And so just some basic information on that, but we'll take the board through it, because you need to know some of the acronyms or whatever. We'll give you a page of some of the, when we say EOP and ERC and all that kind of fun stuff. But we'll have to activate the board if we had an emergency, just like we did the pandemic pretty much, and so just.
Well, did the fault get bigger? Because we've been on the end of one up through Kentucky. They got bigger?
I think it's getting bigger, and it was activity a couple weeks ago, maybe.
No kidding. Where?
Yep, and it was 2 areas in Ohio, so they were just looking, they put it out there, they're just monitoring it. Do you remember the fault, Olivia, what the name is? I don't know, it's not the San Andreas, that's the one out there,
No,
but. Yeah, I know, I love that one, but it's been here.
It had a name,
Yeah, and I just think that sometimes, the things that you always think is least likely to happen, may happen, so at least, when I said, do we go outside, do we stand in the building, do we stand in the archway, we just need to get some basic understanding. Also, the staff went through active training. We went through a video, and I think, did we send the tape to you guys to look at that? Add training, it's avoid, defend, what's it, deny, defend. And so it's just, we just always talk in our own department as far as what we should do, what room we should go into, what our emergency word is. Because a lot of times if people say, come on out here, what? But if we say that emergency word that the staff knows, then
don't put that out on this meeting.
Yeah, so it just means to run. And so anyway, so just always remember to be prepared, so.
And we'll also be working at the Juneteenth event this,
Oh yeah, Saturday, right?
Saturday, yep, for temporaries as well.
That's this Saturday? Didn't get me invites. Should probably show up. Okay. Anything else for environmental health?
Nope, I believe that is it.
All right, anything else from anyone? I wrote a note at the top of my agenda, and it said, the most productive Board of Health meeting yet.
Heather?
So thank you guys for your extra time, because these are the things that we actually can impact the health. And I feel like we haven't had a whole lot of proactive efforts, and this is definitely one, so thank you guys. So our next meeting is technically the 20th of June, because it is an official meeting of the Board of Health. So next Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. downstairs in council chambers, and then after that, our next scheduled meeting will be July 11th at 7:30 here in 2C. So with that, we will adjourn. See you Tuesday for some excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah.